So this board is 5.5 inches wide, but I need something that's 7.5 inches or so. So I'm going to make a panel out of this. I'm going to cut this in half and then glue the two halves together, edge to edge. So let's cut this in half. Using my cross-cut square to make it easier to cut this. So I'm going to glue this edge to edge. So now that this board, the glue has dried up on this board, we need to remove all the excess from the joint here. And I'm just using the scraper for this. The other side has a little bit more glue on it. This was the bottom during the glue up, so the glue ran down here. I'm going to use a chisel to remove some of the big pieces, and then I can scrape the rest of it. Now I need to trim this board because the ends are not even with each other since I glued the two planks together. So I'm going to trim it to make sure it's one straight line. And I'm using my cross-cut square here. The easel will be 7.5 inches square. So I need to mark 7.5 inches here so that I can cut this off. Next, I need to mark where the slot will go. So I wanted 1 inch from each side. So it's going to be here, that's the end of it, here. And then from the bottom, I want it to be, the bottom of it to be 1.5 inches from the bottom of the board, and it's going to be a 1/2 inch slot. So this is all marked. And now I'm going to use a router with a 1/2 inch bit to cut this. I have the edge guide on my router right here set so that it would cut the mortise exactly where I need it, between 1.5 and 2 inches. And I have set my depth stop to be about half of the mortise, 1/4 of an inch or so. And then I'll do a second pass that's deeper that will cut all the way through. And then for the second pass, I'm going to lower my stop here, and I'm going to go in the same direction as the first pass. And now we need to square off the corners on the mortise using a chisel. This is a 1/2 inch chisel, so it fits perfectly in this mortise. So now we need to cut the second piece that fits inside the mortise here. That means it needs to be 5.5 inches wide. I've already marked 5.5 inches here. It's right there. And I'm just going to cut that off. And you can see here that it fits in perfectly. First, I'm going to cut a little 1-inch wide strip from the end that will be glued vertically to the front of that piece later. So this will get glued like this to the front of the piece to hold the book in place. And then finally I will cut off the piece that will be holding the book in the easel. When the easel is assembled, it will look something like this, with this piece glued up here. Okay, so I'm going to glue this lip onto the front, and then I'm gonna clamp it and let it dry. It's probably gonna be too much glue, but I'll just scrape it off later. I'm going to sand both pieces using 150 grit sandpaper and then 220 grit sandpaper. The stain I'm applying is a weathered gray wood stain. After a couple of minutes, the excess needs to be wiped off, and you're supposed to wipe it off with the grain. And now I'm going to put stain on the other side.